This is
Inclusive Art, the podcast, with Rebecca Navarro. Hello again, friends of Arte Inclusivo. I'm finally back after a long break. I want to thank all the people who have asked me to come back and who have followed the Arte Inclusivo social media. As you can imagine, this podcast requires effort, and sometimes there is just not enough time or resources to continue. But now I hope that I can keep going, and I want to announce that I have a Patreon where you can make a contribution. There are 3 levels which offer different benefits. So if you like this content and you would like to hear more stories, please subscribe, as your contribution would help me keep this project going. I'll leave the link in the description of the podcast. Thank you also for supporting the podcast by subscribing, rating, and sharing.
Inclusive Art.
Inclusive Art. There are many women artists I would like to talk about, especially this time of the year, with the Day of the Dead and Halloween happening. I have made a selection of female artists which I hope you will enjoy. I call them the Dames of Darkness. If you know of another artist that I should include or talk about, you can send me a message on social media at Arte Inclusivo Podcast or email me at arteinclusivopodcast@gmail.com. Inclusive Art,
The podcast.
A woman learns to draw at the local morgue in her city. Another uses elements from her ancestors to make art. One more focuses on a more real fear, interracial carnage and chaos, while another builds altars in her paintings. And 2 other women, with their eternal friendship, collaborate and create magical universes, potions, and mystical worlds. Let's discover the Dames of Darkness. Leonor Fini. Leonor Fini was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina on August 30th, 1907, and died in Paris in 1996. She moved to Italy since she was very young. She could go to the local morgue in Trieste and thus became an accomplished artist by sketching cadavers. Eventually, her artistic career led her to Paris, where she met many surreal artists with which she developed important relations. She maintained a certain independence from them, often rejecting labels placed upon her. She critiqued the male-dominated surrealist movement, particularly for its often objectifying portrayal of women. Fini did not subscribe to the idea of the muse, a common trope in surrealism, where women were often depicted as objects of male desire. Instead, her women were the protagonists of their own narratives. Her female figures are often presented in mythological or dreamlike settings, exuding an aura of power and self-possession. She often explored themes of transformation, playing with the idea of mutable identities and hidden selves, reflecting her interest in mystery and the unknown. Fini was a talented designer, creating costumes and sets for theater, ballet, and opera productions. Her designs for Jean Genet's The Maids and Federico Fellini's 8½, are particularly notable. Fini also illustrated numerous books, including works by Edgar Allan Poe, Charles Baudelaire, and Jean Cocteau. Her illustrations, like her paintings, often embrace a gothic, erotic, and fantastical aesthetic. Fini was also a writer, producing novels and essays. Her friends described her as androgynous, flamboyant, talented, glamorous, controversial, and powerful. She lived an unconventional life. Though Fini never married, she had many lovers, both male and female. Leonor Fini is a dame of darkness for her relationship with mysticism, her exploration of transformation, and her love for fantastical worlds.
Inclusive Art.
Inclusive Art. Betye Saar. 98-year-old Betye Saar was born in Pasadena, California in 1926. Her works address issues of race, gender, time, and spirituality, as she herself mentions that there are no limits to curiosity about the unknown. She explores themes of mysticism in her art, incorporating elements of African American folk traditions as well as mysticism, astrology, and spirituality. Saar is recognized as a significant figure in the Black arts movement and the feminist arts of the 1960s and the 1970s. Her work spans a variety of media, including printmaking, sculpture, collage, and installation art, but she's particularly known for her assemblage, which are artworks created from found objects and materials. One of her most famous works is The Liberation of Aunt Jemima of 1972. In this assemblage, she transforms the racist caricature of Aunt Jemima into a symbol of black female empowerment. The piece critiques racial stereotypes and is considered a seminal work in African American feminist art. Saar has been a major influence on generations of artists. Her legacy is significant in both the feminist and African American art worlds, where she continues to inspire discussions around representation, identity, and justice. Betye Saar is one of our dames of darkness for her approach to spirituality, her feminism, and her legacy as a Black woman artist.
Inclusive art.
Inclusive art. Faith Ringgold. Ringgold was born in Harlem, New York City in 1930, and she passed away recently in Englewood, New Jersey on April of 2024. Her art mediums went from painting to mixed media sculptures, performance art, writing, but she was also a teacher and an activist. Her works address issues of race, gender, and social justice, such as the American People series number 20, Die, from 1967. This powerful painting evokes the civil uprisings erupting around the United States at that time. Ringgold recalled her motivation for creating this artwork. I became fascinated with the ability of art to document the time, the place, and cultural identity of the artist. How could I, as an African American woman artist, document what was happening around me? American People series number 20, Die, is a bloody image. Blood spatters evenly across an interracial group of men, women, and children, suggesting that no one is free from this struggle. Ringgold was also a pioneering artist who utilized quilting and storytelling as art forms, helping to bridge the gap between fine art and craft traditions. At some point, she went to visit Nigeria and Ghana to explore her African roots and art making, which had a big influence on her works. Faith Ringgold is a dame of darkness for showcasing the horrors of modern life and for daring to make a change in the art world by expressing her points of view.
Inclusive art.
Inclusive art. María Izquierdo. Izquierdo was born on October 30th, 1902, in San Juan de los Lagos, Jalisco, Mexico, and died on Mexico City on December 2nd of 1955. She married very young, at 15, to a military officer with whom she had 2 children. She divorced shortly after and went to live in Mexico City, where she entered the National School of Fine Arts at a time when it was very difficult to be a single, divorced mother and an artist. In 1929, Izquierdo became romantically involved with the artist Rufino Tamayo, with whom she lasted 4 years. The works of both have correspondences and mutual influences. She met different artists such as Antonin Artaud, Diego Rivera, David Alfaro Siqueiros, and more. The latter 2 blocked her efforts to paint murals in Mexico City. Works like Sorrowful Friday from 1940 express Izquierdo's background, her beloved childhood, and her relationship to Catholicism, womanhood, and ritual. She depicted altars in her works, filled with meaning and symbolism. This expressed her Mexicanity, her sense of the feminine, sometimes sacred, sometimes painful. These altars were made from her memories, the past brought to the present as expressed by her hand on the canvas. María Izquierdo is a dame of darkness for her expression of a feminine Mexicanity, tradition, culture, and her understanding of ritualistic altars that connect us to our ancestry.
Inclusive art.
Inclusive art. Leonora Carrington and Remedios Varo. Both painters met in Paris in 1936. Carrington was born in England in 1917. She was from a wealthy family and had to leave her home to become an artist. I made a complete episode of Remedios Varo, episode 7 in Spanish and 8 in English, in case you want to listen to those episodes. Varo was born in Catalonia in 1907. Carrington and Varo's friendship continued when they both arrived in Mexico City after their exile caused by World War II. Their works have a dreamlike, fantastic, alchemical, magical, personal, and transcendent character. They spend time together creating magic potions, reading texts on magic and alchemy, creating recipes for love, reading the tarot, and calling each other witches. They were feminist witches who studied science and the arts and plants, and their works are full of wonderful symbolism that I invite you to explore. Carrington and Varo are dames of darkness for their interest in building magical universes based on ancient texts and bathed in feminine mysticism that still inspire us today. Send us a message to arteinclusivopodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can follow us at Arte Inclusivo Podcast on social media. You can also subscribe to our Patreon. I will always appreciate your support. If you like this content, please rate, share, and like wherever you listen. Arte Inclusivo, the podcast, is written, created, and produced by me, Rebecca Navarro, with the support of Margot Cortázar. Thank you for listening, and let's make exclusive art inclusive. This was Inclusive Art,
The podcast
with Rebecca Navarro.